Over the years, I've given many talks in many different venues. Some of the most exciting have been at the Oxford Union and my TEDx talk in Brixton in England. And so following is a compilation of all the different talks I've given over the years and hopefully the best moments from them because they're actually quite long. So I hope you enjoy. I think of Leonardo da Vinci, who had a quote at the end of his life saying, after you've worked really hard during the day, you've toiled at something, you go to sleep and you have this great feeling like you accomplished something. But when you die, do you have that same feeling? Like, I did something, I accomplished something, now I can die in peace. And I think the worst thing is in life would be to reach the age of 60, 65 and go, God, I could have been so much more. I could have created something. I could have done what I said I was going to do. I could have written that book, but I didn't. To me, I tell anybody, if you're in your 20s, don't ever have that feeling. And it'll come quicker than you imagine. Realize that you want to reach that end with a sense of, I did what I felt I could do when I was a child. I had these dreams and I reached them.
We see the book or the project that brings the money and the attention. In other words, we see the visible signs of opportunity and success. But we are grasping at an illusion. What really allows for such dramatic changes are the things that occur on the inside of a person and are completely invisible. The slow accumulation of knowledge and skills, the incremental improvements in work habits and the ability to withstand criticism. Any change in people's fortune is merely the visible manifestation of all of that deep preparation. By essentially ignoring this internal invisible aspect, we fail to change anything fundamental within ourselves. And so in a few years' time, we reach our limits yet again, we grow frustrated, we crave change, we grab at something quick and superficial, and we remain prisoners forever of these recurring patterns in our lives. I want you to get over this notion that I find so annoying that so many people have, that success and power in life is dependent on something like genetics. Like some people are born with a larger brain, or they have wealthy parents who are able to send them to the right school, or it's all a matter of luck. What really makes people successful and powerful in life, and it's not just me saying this, I read hundreds of books on the subject. What makes people successful is their degree of motivation. Okay, I could repeat it 100 times, but it's true every time I say it. When you are motivated, when you feel yourself emotionally engaged in the subject, you learn faster. You learn what could take somebody 10 years to learn, you can learn in 2 years. When you feel emotionally engaged with something, you're able to push past all the obstacles. You've got to know what you don't like. I remember when I was about 24, I was a journalist living in New York, and I had written this article about traveling through Italy. I thought it was a great article. And the editor wanted to have lunch with me. I thought, oh, great, he's going to praise this article. He brought me in. She started telling me, Robert, you're never going to be a writer. You need to find some other career in your life. You need to go to law school. Just forget it. You don't have the tools. Your writing is all over the place. My reaction, of course, initially I was a little bit upset. Eventually I said, no, that's not true. What is true is that I'm not made for journalism. I know what I don't like. I don't like journalism. I don't like working in large corporations. I don't like the politics that is involved with 20 or 30 people. I need to work for myself. You can't just say whatever is on your mind. You can't just think that being who you are and being natural and being, your normal self is going to get you very far. You have to be careful in this world. I'm not telling you to be paranoid. I'm just telling you to be self-aware that the people around you have egos, that people are judging you based on what you say, about how you dress, about your style, about how you look, about the friends you associate with. You may not like it, but it's the reality. You have to understand some of these basic principles so that you don't go around
making these painful mistakes. So law number one, never outshine the master. The idea is very simple. Your boss who you work for, and wherever you are, you're going to have a boss, even if it's only a company of 2 people. That person has an ego, has insecurities. And if you try too hard to impress him or her, if you show off too much, you probably are going to inadvertently trigger their insecurities. And they're going to do weird things to you. They're not going to say, you made me feel insecure, you made me think that maybe you're after my job. Instead, they're going to fire you, or they're going to put you in a bad position. They're never going to tell you what exactly the reality is.
Your attitude is either opening or closing your mind, making you a conventional thinker or a youthful, creative maverick. Now, there are 2 sides to this power of altering your attitude. The first side, the one we have been exploring now, demonstrates the power you have by altering your attitude will alter your behavior, making you less fearful, more open and creative. The other side is the social effect, the effect that you have on other people through your attitude. This creates what I call a self-fulfilling dynamic. And if you can understand this concept, it is like magic. It gives you the power to influence people in this world.
One of the most important life skills that anybody can develop is focus and concentration. I know when I try and figure out an idea for a book that I'm writing, and I give it an hour and then I distract and I go away, I lose something. But if I dig for 4 or 5 hours for 10 days into this one problem, like a madman, obsessed with it, I get somewhere. I get some truth to it. And Steve Jobs, the person that we venerate, he was the master of that. Unfortunately, the person who ironically created the iPhone that's driving us all crazy, but he would close his door, leave me alone for 24 hours, I'm going to think this through. You don't realize the power that you have with your brain when you focus on something simple for enough time. It's like a drill boring into a piece of wood. You got to keep on boring and boring and boring until you get all the way through.
Sometimes what happens to people, they leave the apprenticeship phase and they feel like they've learned it all. And they stop this process of feeding the brain experiences, and it all kind of dies. And they become what I call conventional. I say that children are born with what we call an original mind, which is a creative and a childlike way, and that what happens to people is they get a conventional mind that goes around in the same grooves. That's what Steve Jobs called it. It's like the grooves of a record, and you just go round and round and round. This mind that I'm talking about is the dimensional mind. It has vast dimensions that it can explore because you fed it. And when you enter this phase, you want to keep that momentum, learning more, practicing more, experimenting, failing if you want, constantly feeding it with new experiences. And that creativity comes of its own because that's how the brain operates. You're more interested in your own ideas and your own problems. That's where your energy and fascination goes. But you must realize that the people you're dealing with are weirder and more interesting than you could ever imagine. I like to tell people, think of the people you deal with as if they were characters in a movie. I had a job once where I was really depressed, people I thought were really awful, and I imagined that they were actually figures in Greek mythology, and I had to figure out which one each one of them was. It helped me a lot because now I had to think about their lives and their childhood and what made them the way they were. So the people you're dealing with are much more interesting than you imagined. If you can turn that energy around and you can start placing yourself in their shoes, it will go a long way to taking that self-absorption and turning it outward.
Sun Tzu wrote that in every battle is won or lost before it is ever fought. And basically what he meant was something is going on in the mind, the strategy itself, that is either right or wrong. And by the time you arrive for battle, you've either won or you've either lost. But the battle he's referring to is the battle in your mind. If your mind is filled with all kinds of ideas from the past, if you repeat the same formulas that you've used again and again, you have already lost the war. If, on the other hand, you try this other approach, and you ground yourself in this idea of do not fight the last war, which I maintain is the foundation of all solid strategic thinking, you have already won the war before it even happens.
Boredom is a great thing in life. You want boredom. If you don't experience moments of boredom, then something is wrong with you. And the reason is that when you're bored, you have to develop internal skills for dealing with it. You have to learn how to, with your own mind, find ways to entertain yourself. And so the worst thing that happens are people go for instant gratification. If you can deal with boredom, you understand that greater things will happen if you postpone your need for immediate gratification. So boredom is teaching you something. It's telling you develop your own skills. So instead of grabbing a video game to entertain yourself, when I was a kid, we had to invent games to deal with the boredom when our parents left us alone. We had to become creative and inventive. So you want to feel boredom. Boredom means that you have to do something yourself to get over it. You have to develop those internal muscles and go, I've got to entertain myself. I can't turn on a show. I can't play this game. I have to do it from something from within. If you listen to it and it will develop your character. If you listen to it and you learn the lessons from it properly.
There's a quote, this French philosopher, Baron de Montesquieu, a political philosopher from the 18th century that I kind of like, and it goes as follows. We have 3 educations in our life. The first is from our parents, the second is from our schoolmasters, and the third is from the world. And the third education contradicts all that we learn from the first 2. And basically, what it means is you go and you learn all of these skills and all these very important things in university, but essentially the years that follow, what I'm going to call your apprenticeship, requires a different way of thinking. The rules are completely different. It's not the same. In fact, many of the things that you learn and many of the habits that you learn early in your life are actually the wrong kinds of things that are going to help you, that you need in this path towards mastery that I'm drawing.
According to Keats, the Shakespeares of the world, the highly creative types, cultivate what he calls negative capability. They can negate the ego and its anxieties. They are not in a rush to come to a conclusion about the world or any new phenomenon. They are completely open to entertaining this idea or that idea at the same time while continuing to observe what's going on around them. They can look at ambiguous or contradictory evidence and not be disturbed or feel the need to explain them away. This ability to withstand what seems mysterious, to manage the lack of knowing something with certainty, is the primary quality of all creative people, no matter their profession. The key to the ability to transform ourselves is actually insanely simple. To reverse this perspective, stop fixating on what other people are saying and doing, on the money, the connections, the outward appearance of things. Instead, look inward. Focus on the smaller, internal changes that lay the groundwork for a much larger change in fortune. It is the difference between grasping at an illusion and immersing yourself in reality. And reality is what will liberate and transform you.
Once you experience the freedom and sense of power that comes from letting go of the past and facing life with a confident, life-affirming attitude, there will be no turning back. You will stop listening to people who try to arbitrarily set limits on what you can achieve. And you will have that touch of madness and insanity that all great inventors and builders have. Just enough madness to try something that no one else has tried before, and just enough insanity to pull it off.
I compare this uniqueness that each one of you has to a voice that's inside of your head. It's telling you, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. It's what fits you, it's what you're good at. But what happens with all of us as you get older is that voice gets weaker and weaker. You listen to your parents who say you need to be a doctor or a lawyer, you need to worry about making money, You listen to peers who are saying, this is a cool job, this is the kind of profession you should be going into. You start thinking in terms of what really matters is I have to be comfortable, I have to look for a position that's comfortable. To the point where you could graduate from college, you could be in your early 20s, and you have no idea who you are. That voice is totally drowned out. And you end up going on a career path that seems right. You're going to make money. It's all, everything's figured out. And in your 20s, you can kind of fake your way through it because you're young, you're energetic, you're smart and everything. But what ends up happening as you get older is you're not so engaged with that subject. You're not learning it as deeply as other people. You're not really focusing as much as you can. And by the 40s, something very dangerous can happen. You could be made redundant. Someone else comes along who's younger and cheaper than you. And now you're pretty much screwed because you haven't built up the skills that you needed to build up to adjust your career.
And I have this theory in mastery that when you create anything, the spirit that you create it with, the energy, the excitement, is translated into the product itself. So when somebody writes a book just for money, you can kind of smell it when you read the book. It kind of reeks of someone just trying to get some, we can sense that.
Sure.
But when the writer is excited, it excites the reader. So the love and the desire you put into your project will translate.
The key to everything is actually being strategic with yourself and looking at yourself and being honest with yourself. So if you figure out what your life's task is, if you figure out I was meant to start a business or to write a book or whatever, and it really connects to you, and you have a great love and excitement about it, then when people are being political and they're trying to distract you or they're giving you bad advice, you have the energy to move past it. But if you're filled with doubts and insecurities, if you go, I kind of want to write a book, but maybe I want to start my own restaurant, or maybe I want to write poetry, or maybe I want to be a rock star, it's never going to add up to anything, right? And then when people come up with their bad ideas, or they're political, or they're envious, you'll fall for it. So you have to have a real good, solid sense of who you are, what makes you different, and what you love,